Hi, I'm Sandy Brown, Mayor of the Town of Orangeville, and welcome to Talk 519 on Rogers TV. We're here to talk about issues that matter most to the residents of Orangeville and Dufferin County. Today, we're going to go inside Town Hall and introduce some new staff that have joined our team in Orangeville. Later in the show, Andrew McKinney, who's General Manager of Corporate Services, will join in. But first, let me introduce you to Nandini Syed, who's our new treasurer here in the Town of Orangeville. Welcome, Nandini.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you've been here for a few weeks now. You're kind of getting your feet wet, and it's a pretty important job. I mean, the town really runs off of the budget that the treasurer puts together. You're pulling together information from all departments and presenting it in a way that sometimes laymen need to look at it because councillors don't have, necessarily in-depth financial training, and so it's an very important job for you to put this out there for. So you've had a chance here to explore Orangeville and go to some of the summer events. What are your first impressions of Orangeville as a town and as a resident now? Yeah.
So I have been familiar with Orangeville for the longest time. I lived in Toronto, and then when I moved into the municipal sector, my first position was with Kincardine. So I went back and forth between Toronto and Kincardine, and
it's a halfway point.
Halfway point.
Yeah.
So I drove through Orangeville, so I knew the community very well. Been with the town for 5 weeks now, and I had the pleasure and the privilege to tour some of our facilities, recreational facilities with council and some of the new staff that joined our team. As a self-proclaimed foodie myself, one of the events that I'm really looking forward to is, and I actually written this down, Savor the Flavor Culinary Tour that I believe starts on July 27th. So Orangeville represents and I think embodies two of my biggest weaknesses. It has a tremendous theater scene and then restaurant choices in downtown core. So I haven't had a chance to look at the exhaustive list of all the events, but like I said, the one that I'm looking forward to is that culinary tour. Yeah. And in the last 5 weeks, I had opportunities to explore some of the local restaurants.
Great. Some, you just touched on theater there. I think something that's grown in Orangeville, certainly over the past 20 years, has been our appreciation of cultural things like art and music and theater. And Orangeville's become a real hub here. And I think it's become more important in Orangeville than in some other municipalities, and what makes Orangeville an attractive destination both for tourists and for residents. So.
And it gives its uniqueness, I believe.
Absolutely.
So when we think of theater towns, I mean, obviously we have Stratford because I live in London, so that's closer to Stratford. But Orangeville has always resonated to me as a town that not only just supports culture for the sake of it, but has a niche for culture, and your support and love for theater is what brings people like myself to the town.
Right. Some of the things that are going to be coming up in our budget, maybe in the fall, are going to be ways to expand cultural things, expand maybe events on weekends. We've kind of, it seems retrenched a little bit from the weekend activity in the summer. And I know that the BIA is working on things, and I know that Town Council is very interested in promoting more cultural and fun events that we can do in our downtown core, particularly on the weekends in the summertime. So I'm looking forward to hopefully approving some of those things going forward as we explore.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've been both in the public and private sector, but can you give us some of your background, your work experience?
Yeah, as you have touched upon, I do have 16 years of both private and public sector financial management experience, 13 of which is actually in the municipal sector. I started my career, as I alluded earlier, with Kincardine. That was my first municipal assignment, and I started there as the deputy treasurer. So I've worked for, and I had the privilege to work for 4 very unique and dynamic municipalities in Southwest Ontario, starting from Kincardine, South Huron, East Tavistock, to North Middlesex, which was the last assignment. So from the Deputy Treasurer's chair, I moved progressively all the way up to the CAOs. And that opened me up to varieties of experience at the CAO level. I saw the organization on municipal function from a bird's eye view, and it helped me develop my appreciation for everything we do at municipal level. It also gives you an added layer or perspective to do the job of a treasurer, right? Because you're now looking at the entire function of municipal government, which I already had at treasurer in different places, but from a CAO's chair, that just elevated to the next level. In my 13 years in the sector, I have, and I was actually doing an inventory of some of my achievements. I have done 13 budgets, 14 audits, wrote about 150 or so odd policies, launched 3 strategic plans, 4 asset management plans. So I've effectively developed and implemented asset management plan in the last 4 places that I've worked.
Wow, very good.
So that is sort of quickly to give you a summary of what I have done in the past.
So I think Orangeville, as well as being a cultural center, we're a sports town too.
Yes.
We have a strong lacrosse, hockey, soccer, a number of different sports. And when I think about what you've just said and the fact you've had some CAO experience in your career, is we talk about bench strength. When you're talking about sporting bench strength, where a great experience can be brought into the mix, and so there's really no learning curve for you in terms of understanding municipal affairs and budget issues within the town, right? With all of that experience, and particularly with some CAO position, which for those who don't know, we're going to have Ed Brennan, who's our Chief Administrative Officer. Essentially, the CAO is from a town staff perspective the CEO of the organization, the one that oversees all of the departments and who department heads report to. So that's great that you've had that experience, and we're lucky to have you here to share that in Orangeville. So, as the treasurer of the town of Orangeville, what do you see as your prime responsibilities, and what are your goals that you have set to, any changes that you can see that you might be implementing in your department now?
So generally speaking, the role or responsibility of a treasurer is, if you can imagine sort of a triangle, sort of inverted triangle. At the very bottom, you are doing the day-to-day operations, so making sure your vendors are looked after, your accounts payable is done, your payroll is done, your employees are paid, your receivable tax bills go out, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the bottom layer of that responsibility. Now let's go a layer up, which is the second layer. Is at this point you are doing some of the things that are more prescribed in legislation. So the treasurer's position is highly prescribed by the Municipal Act, the Assessment Act, the Development Charges Act. It also has to follow the Public Sector Accounting Board guidelines, or PSAB. So that is kind of the second layer. And the top layer is essentially providing the strategic direction or the strategic advice. So the treasurer also works as a consultant to mayor, to council, and to CAO and senior management team. So very broadly speaking, those are the 3 layers of responsibility that the treasurer brings to the table, or the position entails. In terms of my vision, I'm on week 5, and as my GM would tell you, that we're all in the listening phase right now. So as you have correctly pointed out, that for me, coming to this job after 13 years of experience, so there's not a lot of steep learning curve, but all municipalities have their nuances, so it takes a little bit of time to figure out where things fit. In terms of vision, one of the things that I'm very quickly looking into is our asset management plan. At the end of the day, the service that municipal government are mandated to provide to our ratepayers, all of these services at some level or some point or the other requires assets, physical assets. So then,
and maintenance of those
absolutely,
assets,
replacement of them, upgrading them, and so on and so forth. So having a robust and an up-to-date asset management plan is the key. The other layer to this is that, as you're already aware, that the provincial government has rolled out a new regulation 588/17. Under that regulation, there are some now very prescribed steps and methods that we have to follow to maintain our asset management plan. So that is one of the things that I'm looking into. Of course, we're getting into budget season.
Right.
It's not so much the vision per se, but again, presenting budget that is not only accessible for council and easy to understand, but is accessible and easy for our ratepayers to follow.
Absolutely.
So that's obviously another thing that I'm looking into.
Yeah. Well, the asset management plan is really something that interests me a great deal, because in order to plan budgets going forward, you really
Yes.
have to understand where, in what condition all of your assets are in. And so I've been very impressed with our IT department, the GIS information that they're putting together, things like, the underground services and signage and just everything that the town owns, and putting, I guess with departmental input from the department heads, what the lifespan of that asset is, when it has to be serviced or replaced, and that includes roads. And so all of the tighter that asset management plan and study is, the easier probably it is to budget going forward, right? And planning.
Absolutely,
in the
because
future.
that's kind of the roadmap, not just for the next 1 or 2 years. Some of these asset management plan and our budgeting process, again, going back to the regulation, as of this year, we are absolutely required and mandated to roll out a 10-year plan.
Right.
So now we're looking, traditionally municipalities have done 5 years, which I think Orangeville has in the past. Now we're looking into 10 years. And as we are going through this process, there may be even longer term. And some of the assets, if you look at your bridges and culverts and roads, they have very long life expectancy,
Right.
right?
So you mentioned about the top layer of your inverted pyramid being sort of advice, really, and policy advice. So one of the things that came to my mind was sometimes municipalities have to borrow money.
Yes.
And so it'd be nice to understand, what the correct mix is there and something. So we're going to have to take a break right now, Nadine, but when we come back, we're going to be joined by your general manager, and we'll be right back with Talk 509. Thank you. We're back to Talk 519 on Rogers TV. Joining us is Andrea McKinney, General Manager of Corporate Services for the Town of Orangeville. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
So for those of you at home that don't know, last year Orangeville underwent a bit of a structural change in terms of our staffing, and there were 3 new senior positions created, 3 general manager positions. This one has just recently been filled by Andrea. And Andrea, can you just tell us what encompasses the corporate services envelope or umbrella that you're responsible for now?
So the corporate services envelope includes the treasurer's team. We have the clerk's team, who I understand you're going to hear from later. We have human resources, customer service, information technology, and communications.
Right.
Yes.
So basically everything. All the important stuff anyway, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's great. And Nandini, of course, now we were just talking about Treasury and Nandini's position, and one of the things that came up at the end of our first segment was asset management.
Right.
And Nandini, I both share that. I'm sure you do as well, Andrea, that that's really an important thing that we have to get under control and spend some of our resources kind of pulling the best information we can together, so that helps us plan going forward all of our spending, really. I mean,
Right.
it's a key ingredient to all that. So, when what resources are we going to be able to put towards this in terms of your department, and when do you think that we'll be delving deeper into this? What are
In the next few months, actually, we've started talking about it already. It's a high priority for our CAO, Ed, who I understand is also on your show today, because we appreciate that the town's ability to sustain its assets has a critical role in both how we do the budgeting processes, but as well as all the other services that we provide in the immediate and long term.
Right. So before we get more into the business of the town, I just wanted, maybe you could share some of your early experiences in the town of Orangeville. What are your thoughts so far about what you're seeing, and what's maybe different from where you've been recently?
So what I'm seeing is a lot of passion and commitment to the community. You've got a dedicated team of public servants that really want to help make a better community and really serve the strategic vision that have been put forward by council. And I think that type of commitment lends itself naturally to continuing to evolve. So that's something I'm very excited about. And then you have a number of foundational pieces already in place that we can continue to build on as we move forward.
Yeah. Now you came from Hamilton.
Yes.
So obviously a much bigger municipality, and what are some of the differences and some of the similarities maybe that you see in municipal life in a city versus a town?
Sure. So similarities would be, there are, I think, common components that every municipality has to deal with. Number one, you're the front line for the resident experience. That's where people spend most of their time, and so your ability to impact residents' lives is higher than a lot of other levels of government.
Right.
Then you've got similar types of functions that are provided: recreation, parks, public works, all of those components. I would suggest a major difference, though, is agility and your ability to come together, make decisions, move things forward, and do so in a way that can be very quickly, very engaging, and your time is compressed as a result.
Right. So the larger the organization is, the more difficult it is to move it off course, basically. Is that
More layers.
yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. So again, some of your other responsibilities include communication, and I know that's something that's been a priority for council, that we'd like to see an improved ability to communicate. And I think you've also got some sort of IT and technical background as
Yeah.
well, which what I'm seeing is connecting with our residents through electronic means is more and more important, and we need to really get more into that as a town. I think you sensing that as well as what I am.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think the structure you talked about that has recently been in place, bringing those groups together really gives us a new opportunity to change the service experience.
Right.
And to focus on being multi-channel, allowing the different residents to receive information in the way that they want to receive it, but also having people understand the commonality that now exists between things like IT, digital communications, and by an extension, customer service. So offering new services online as an example, more things through mobile platforms, and just changing the way we can collaborate and communicate with the community is an opportunity I know the team's excited about.
Yeah, I know that it's just the technology's moving at such a great speed that I think we're trying to catch up to it, really, because the leading edge stuff is like out here. But I think I know council's committed. We've already talked about funding things like improving our website and maybe getting some mobile app things going so that we can communicate more quickly with residents, but also give them all the information is there. It's just we've got to pull it together
Yeah.
and make it easy, and that's our challenge, I think. So I wish you well. I know it's going to be a challenge, but I can tell you have the full support of council on that. So if we need more resources, I'm sure we're going to pull them together.
So we can write that down.
Pending budgetary
Approvals.
issues. You folks are going to be on the front line of the any kind of funding and austerity issues that are being brought to bear on municipalities by the provincial government. And it's something that, we haven't seen what the full scope of that's going to be, but it's certainly clear that the provincial Conservative government wants to tighten the belt, and we're going to be required, I think, to look at those things. So anyway, I know it's nothing new for you. It's a concern for council as we go into our next budget session that we had a pretty nice budget go through last time. It was a friendly budget for the residents, being less than 1%, but going forward, we're going to have to see what we can do to maintain that type of below cost of living, which is tough to do. The last council actually left us with some surplus, which allowed us to take advantage of that. We don't know what's going to happen this year, but we'll see. So something I want to touch upon was this the Fizzin, is that right?
Different. Yes.
Difficin of the Year Award by the Innovation Factory for your work, Smart City Program, Open Data Program, City Lab, and other projects. So can you toot your own horn a little bit? Tell us what allowed you to be chosen to win this award.
Sure. So that award is recognizing individuals in the community who the Innovation Factory felt went above and beyond moving the innovation agenda and trying to help either tech companies or startups to advance that agenda in the city. So one of the things I was accountable for is the Open Data Program in Hamilton. So standing up both the program and then the Open Data Platform. And so that lends itself to some of the priorities of Ed in terms of GIS and mapping and sharing information with the community, including transparency and all of the components that come with making more information available online, the way that you've talked about today. City Lab was actually, it's a social innovation hub that brings together our academic partners and the city to collectively solve community challenges the municipal staff may not be able to get to on their own, using the capacity and the knowledge base of the faculty and students. So that was something that is very, very positive.
Wow.
And then
That's
Smart
great.
City, thank you. Smart City and digital transformation was really, when you boil those things down, they're about the quality of life for the community. How do you use technology to enable change in a way that improves the experience for residents, businesses, and visitors, while also improving operating efficiencies in a number of areas? Because demands for services continue to go up, capacity continues to, in some cases, either go down. We want to be building sustainable communities. So I worked with all of the teams internally, and I did a broad external consultation to understand what are those high-value use cases that included a global best practices scan. So what are other municipalities doing today that is in production that could be implemented in a municipal setting to help improve our operating efficiencies and improve quality of life?
Yeah, it's something that I've thought about since I decided to throw my hat in the ring here. Was, what we need to do is look at other municipalities, look at their successes, their best practices, and cherry pick the best and bring them back to Orangeville and kind of localize what they're doing. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing to some extent. And really every municipality should be looking at successes in other locations. We're about to embark on a transit task force, for instance. We've been having some struggles with transit, and Innisfil has been a leader in some of these public transit challenges. For instance, they brought Uber in place. There's another program that they're working on. It's called Rover, and it's a matching parking spaces with those that need to park. And these seems like low-hanging fruit to me. I mean, it seems like an easy thing to implement, and we've got over winter parking challenges here in town, which I'm sure most municipalities have. So, we need to look at that, and I hope that things like that will help us, ease the parking burden for our residents. And looking forward to looking at that as this transit task force moves forward. So, what can you maybe give us a couple of key areas that you think you need to focus on over the next 6 months? Like, where would you like to tackle initially? There's obviously a laundry list, but can
Yeah.
you think of two things that
So two things. One is being a new department, bringing those teams together and building out the synergies. Because the priorities that you've just talked about are successfully implemented when those teams are really, running like all cylinders are firing,
right,
right?
right.
And then the digital components are an extension of that. So that would include opportunities for digital transformation and then providing new ways to communicate with residents, getting our message out a little bit more, which is an extension of your brand.
Right.
As you've pointed out, the the opportunity that comes from a council that wants to focus on sharing information in new ways, and then the website would be one. Yeah.
So, asset management and, what I would hope down the road, somebody might be able to go on and say, oh, here's our plan for infrastructure improvement over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that my street is going to be done 5 years from now. And hopefully that's where we're going. But
Yeah.
ladies, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Talk 519. I wish you well in your new jobs here at the town of Orangeville, and looking forward to working with you going forward. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, likewise.
All the
Thank
best.
you.